This is not a love story, it is a case study in controlled psychological captivity. Alessandro Moretti does not merely notice Isabella's defiance. He profiles it, isolates it, and assigns value to it. He identifies her desperation, maps her loyalty to her brother, and positions himself as the sole answer to a crisis. That is the pathology of coercive power. But the most disturbing symptom is Isabella's response, because once survival becomes dependent on the predator, fear begins to blur into attachment. And that is when the cage becomes almost impossible to leave.
In Chicago, real power wasn't in a skyscraper. It resided at table 12 of Lucia's Ristorante, where Alessandro Moretti held court over an espresso. His command eclipsed the mayor's, a reality the staff absorbed as a silent doctrine of submission. Gazes down, hand shearer, his eyes an abyss to be avoided. Isabella Rossi, however, played by a different rulebook. When a cruel, hushed threat bloomed from Moretti's corner, she refused to cower. She placed her tray down, walked toward the center of the restaurant's fear, and faced him. "Sir," her voice was like ice. "We don't permit that language in here." His reply, "Don't test your luck, little girl." The room did not just go quiet, it forgot how to breathe. On Orchard Street, Lucia's was a fragment of the old country, a theater of dark mahogany and rigid tablecloths, where the wine list was more expensive than rent. For Isabella Rossi, it was a war zone she entered nightly. She navigated the demands of entitled patrons, fiery chefs, and the unspoken hierarchy of the staff with an artist's precision. She was sharp, fast, her smile a shield against any complaint. But this performance was armor, hiding a woman forged from raw desperation. Her life was defined by its stark contrasts. At night, she served pasta to men for whom $1,000 was nothing. By day, she walked the sterile halls of St. Jude's Hospital, where Marco, her younger brother, fought a baffling disease that had consumed their insurance. The crushing weight of medicine, consultations, and unending tests was a mountain of debt she climbed by herself. Marco was all the family she had left. Their parents were just ghosts in a faded picture. She would do anything to see him live. That anything had hardened into a core of pure steel within her. That Tuesday night felt especially heavy. The air charged like an oncoming storm. The sparse crowd was a bad omen that unnerved everyone working. A slow evening meant the handful of diners would expect service fit for kings. Her manager, Mr. Henderson, a man whose posture was a constant apology, polished silverware with jittery hands. "He's on his way," Chloe, another waitress and Bella's only true friend, whispered, her tray shaking as she hurried past. Bella knew exactly who he was. The entire atmosphere of Lucia's transformed the second Alessandro Moretti crossed the threshold. The pressure would drop. Voices would die. The clatter from the kitchen seemed to silence itself. He was a phantom in a bespoke suit, known to the world as a reclusive investor. The city's streets, though, knew the unfiltered truth. He was the head of the Moretti crime family, the invisible puppet master of the city's underworld. He never reserved a table, he simply manifested. And on this night, he had company. Beside him was Vincenzo Gallo, his perpetual shadow, a man whose fine suit could not hide his violent nature. A third man, one Bella didn't recognize, was with them. He was older, with slicked back silver hair and a fear so palpable it seemed to make him tremble. He had the look of a man on his final walk. They took table 12, the booth in Bella's station. "Bella, they're yours," Henderson muttered, his eyes glued to the floor. "Be quick and perfect." "I know the procedure, Mr. Henderson," Bella stated, her tone empty of feeling. She took her notepad, inhaled a single steadying breath, and made her way over. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said, her voice a practiced balance of politeness and distance. She aimed her vision at the wall just over their heads, the standard way to serve men of their kind. Vinnie Gallo grunted. The silver-haired man looked as if he might collapse. Alessandro Moretti, however, was perfectly still. Bella could feel his stare, not the lewd look of drunken businessmen, but something else. It was calculating, heavy, the appraisal of a predator watching his territory. He was younger than the rumors claimed, maybe in his mid-30s. His face was a composition of hard, intimidating angles, with a solid jaw and dark eyes that seemed to devour light. A thin white scar split his left eyebrow, the single flaw on an otherwise perfect, severe face. "Your usual Mr. Moretti?" she asked, her gaze firmly on the far wall. "My associate will order first." His voice came out, a deep, smooth baritone with a trace of an Italian accent like velvet stretched over stone. The man with the silver hair, whom she'd later know as Salvatore Bianchi, hesitantly ordered plain spaghetti with no appetizer. It was a child's meal or a last meal. "And for you, Mr. Moretti?" "The bistecca rare, and a bottle of the 2008 Solaya, and bring him," he motioned to Bianchi, "a top-shelf whiskey. The man looks like he needs one." "Right away, sir." She pivoted, every muscle coiled with tension, and retreated. She felt his gaze following her all the way to the kitchen doors. "He's watching you," Chloe hissed, grabbing a new tray. "He's looking through me," Bella corrected. "This was never about a meal." She was completely right. The stress at table 12 was a living thing, tightening in the air. When the food came, Bella served with robotic efficiency. Bianchi's whiskey was never touched. Moretti sliced his steak with clinical precision, his movements deliberate and unhurried, as if he controlled time itself. Their conversation was a low hum, Moretti's deep voice a stark contrast to Bianchi's increasingly panicked whispers. Bella kept her distance, polishing wine glasses at the service station, every nerve in her body screaming. Her job was to be deaf and blind, but the energy was too powerful to block out. It was the absolute calm that comes before a predator strikes. She saw Bianchi slide a white envelope across the tablecloth. Moretti gave no sign he saw it. He just kept eating. Then Bianchi's voice finally broke, climbing with raw desperation. Salvatore Bianchi's plea was a last, desperate move against an inevitable fate. Moretti's reply, quiet but cold as a glacier, spread through the room, a testament to his power. The laws of their world, he told Salvatore, were unbreakable. Bianchi's envelope of restitution was a meaningless gesture against the sin of his betrayal. Moretti's pause was ceremonial, the placement of his fork and knife a transition from supper to sentencing. His eyes, like voids in the flickering light, held the verdict as he repeated the suggestion with a terrifying softness. Walk away. The crime was not theft. It was a challenge to his reign. Moretti's calm accusation turned Bianchi into a pest, something to be exterminated. His whisper, a calculated display of menace, filled the room and declared the man guilty. The crystal glass in his grip became a promise of violence, the focus of Bianchi's animal terror. The panic that followed was a chorus of fear, freezing the other guests. As people hid, Bella simply watched, her eyes locked on the predator's steady hand, a lesson in controlled brutality. The violence was seconds away. In public, he was about to smash the glass in the man's face. He would destroy the man, ruin the restaurant, and cost Bella her job. And if she lost her job, Marco? The resolve in her stomach sharpened into a splinter of ice. She didn't hesitate. She just moved. Bella crossed the room with a speed that shocked even her. The polishing cloth slipped from her fingers as she closed the 10 feet to table 12 in 3 strides. Her arm shot out, her hand closing over Alessandro Moretti's wrist. It was like grabbing marble. The touch sent a current through her. His skin was hot, the muscle beneath it like braided steel, his bones unmovable. His hand, gripping the heavy glass, froze inches from its target. A huge, ringing silence fell over the room, punctuated only by the faint music of the chandelier. Vinnie Gallo was already getting up, his hand going for his jacket, his face a mask of violent disbelief. Salvatore Bianchi was ghostly pale, frozen, half-bent, but Bella only had eyes for Alessandro Moretti. He turned his head with an unnerving slowness. His dark eyes locked with hers. There was no anger there, not yet. Just a deep, cold, and infinite astonishment. It was the expression of a king touched by a commoner, of a god defied by a mortal. He was silent, his stare locked onto hers. His focus dropped to her hand on his wrist, a simple worker's hand with short nails and a small, faded burn. Then his eyes snapped back up to her face. Bella's heart hammered her ribs like a trapped bird. The adrenaline brought every detail of his face into focus. The shadow of a beard on his jaw, the fine lines by his eyes, the dark circle of his iris. She knew with chilling certainty this was the most insane, self-destructive thing she had ever done. This man could snuff out her life with a word. He could incinerate her entire world. He could find Marco. But the only thing she could see was Marco's pale face on a hospital pillow and the stack of red inked bills on her kitchen table. This job was her last thread, one she refused to surrender to this creature of pure threat, no matter his power or fortune. "Sir," she started, her tone trembling but sheathed in ice. "That kind of language is not permitted here." The scar over Moretti's eye flexed. He was a statue of contained fury, ready to shatter. Bella's hand on him remained firm. The scene was utterly surreal. A waitress of 120 pounds, standing up to the city's most feared man. She would not back down. "Our other patrons are disturbed. My co-workers are frightened. And I am about to lose my job because of you." She moved nearer, her voice dropping to a visceral, powerful whisper for his ears alone. "Your identity means nothing to me, and whatever he did to provoke you," she flicked her eyes at Bianchi, "is not my problem. You will not finish this business in my restaurant. Do not try me." Her words electrified the atmosphere, jolting the room into a silent paralysis. "Do not try me," she repeated, the warning absolute. Finally, Vinnie Gallo stepped in. "Take your hand off him," he growled, the dark gleam of a gun emerging from his jacket. "Vinnie," Moretti said. His voice was quiet, but the name landed with the force of a physical blow. Vinnie went rigid. His hand locked the firearm. Alessandro Moretti's undivided attention then snapped back to Bella. His eyes performed a slow, deliberate inventory of her face. He saw her eyes, a volatile mix of hazel defiance and deep-seated terror, plus something else he couldn't name. He saw her lips pressed into a firm, resolute line. He could feel her fear, the wild beat of her pulse in her neck, yet saw her unshakable will not to collapse. Her fingers stayed locked on his wrist, the pressure constant. He'd faced men with knives and guns. Rivals had cursed him, officials had begged him, but no waitress had ever challenged him. He had never been given a warning. The edge of his lip twitched upward. Not a smile. It was something far more disturbing. It was intrigue. His fingers slowly, methodically uncoiled from the glass. It fell from his hand. Bella, braced for violence, kept her grip. The glass fell 2 inches, landing on the tablecloth with a soft, deadened sound. It didn't break. Only then did she pull her hand back as if burned. Moretti deliberately rubbed the skin her fingers had pressed. He glanced at Bianchi, still sobbing quietly. "Go," he ordered, his voice empty of feeling. "Vanish, Salvatore, before I lose my patience and your money." He flicked the envelope with his nail. A pathetically small sum. Bianchi snatched the envelope and bolted from his chair, almost falling in his rush to get away. He ran from the restaurant, leaving his coat, the door slamming like a gunshot in the heavy silence. Moretti's focus returned instantly to Bella. Other diners started speaking again in hushed, nervous tones. From the kitchen, Mr. Henderson watched, his face a white mask of pure fear. Bella stood her ground, hands balled into fists. She had either won a battle or signed her own death warrant. The line was dangerously thin. Moretti reached into his coat. A tiny, uncontrollable flinch was her only reaction. He stopped, noting her movement. He wasn't reaching for a weapon. He pulled out a thick, black wallet and took out a stack of $100 bills, too many to quickly count. He set them down, an amount that made his bill look insignificant. Then he stood. He was tall, over 6 feet, and his shadow consumed her. Bella simply tilted her chin up, refusing to show fear. He straightened his cuffs. "The steak was excellent, Isabella Mies," he said softly. A shock of cold ran through Bella. He knew her name. Her tag was on, but the way he said Isabella felt like a grim sentence, or maybe a promise. He and Vinny walked toward the door. Vinny threw a look over his shoulder, his face filled with pure hate. A silent promise of revenge. Moretti never looked back. He left, and the little bell on the door rang, a sound too cheerful for the tense silence. As the door clicked, Bella's composure broke. She leaned on a booth for support, her whole body shaking as the adrenaline faded, leaving her chilled and sick. "Bella, oh my God," Chloe whispered, rushing to her side. "Do you know what you did? That was Alessandro Moretti." "I know who he is," Bella answered, her eyes locked on the cash. It was more than a month of rent. It would pay for Marco's next treatment. "You're fired!" Mr. Henderson yelled, storming out of the kitchen. "You don't speak to a customer like that, especially not him. Rossi, you're done." Bella turned to him, her fear replaced by a sharp, cold anger. "You were hiding in the kitchen, Mr. Henderson. He was about to attack someone. He was going to wreck your restaurant. I protected your business, and he paid his bill." She gestured to the cash. Henderson's eyes darted from the money to Bella, then to the door. He was trapped between 2 different kinds of fear. "Just clean the table," he mumbled, all his authority gone. "And don't ever do that again." He backed away. Bella started clearing the plates, her hands trembling so much the dishes clattered. She had faced the lion in his den. She had poked the monster, and while gathering the money, a cold truth hit her. The monster wasn't angry. He was interested. That was infinitely more frightening. The next days were a constant, anxious hell. Bella jumped at every sudden noise, at every car that pulled over near her. She went to work expecting to be fired, but Mr. Henderson pointedly refused to look at her. She walked home expecting an attack from a shadow, but her trip was always normal, filled with the usual city sounds. Nothing happened. That was the worst part. The silence from Moretti's world was more threatening than any open warning. It felt like a snake, coiled and ready to strike. Her standoff at table 12 became a staff legend. They started calling her La Leonesa, the lioness, when they thought she couldn't hear. Chloe just watched her with awe and terror. "I don't understand how you're not dead," she'd say, while filling salt shakers. "Me neither," Bella would reply, her voice tight. She kept all the money from table 12. It came to just over $2,000. She used it for Marco's next set of experimental treatments at St. Jude's. Any guilt over the dirty money vanished with the relief of seeing the bill stamped "paid." When she saw him, she put on her best fake smile. "How was work, Bells?" he'd ask, his voice weak, but his smile shining from his thin face. "Busy, Marco. Good night. I got a really big tip." She stroked his hair, her heart like a stone in her chest. "You just focus on getting better. I've got everything else." "You're the best, Bells. I don't know what I'd do." "Shh, don't talk like that," she said, her smile feeling like it would crack. "I'm here for you." The lie tasted like ashes in her mouth. She had no safety net. She was hanging by one thin string, and she knew Alessandro Moretti was holding the scissors. A week later, on a Thursday, he came back. The restaurant was packed. Bella was carrying a full tray when she felt it, a definite change in the room's energy. She looked over. He was standing by the host. He was alone. No Vinny, no crew, just him in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car. The hostess, a college kid named Sophie, was visibly shaking. "Mr. Moretti, what a pleasure," Mr. Henderson said, rushing up with anxious deference. "A table for you, sir. Our best one. Please follow me." "No." Moretti's single word cut through Henderson's rambling. His eyes moved past the manager, searching the room until they found her. He locked eyes with Bella, and a faint smile touched his mouth. "I'll wait for one of her tables." The tray in Bella's hands suddenly felt like it weighed a ton. He was asking for her. A family was at table 12. The only open spot in her section was a small two-top by the wall. "Of course," Henderson stuttered. "Table 9. Isabella, you have Mr. Moretti at table 9. Bella gave a sharp nod, her face a blank professional mask. She served the main courses, took a quick breath in the kitchen to steady herself, and stepped back into the tense dining room. He was already seated, one leg neatly crossed, studying the wine menu like a regular customer. When she approached, he looked up. "Isabella," he murmured, his voice a low growl. "A pleasure to see you again. I'm pleased Mr. Henderson was smart enough to keep you." So he knew. He knew Henderson tried to fire her. He knew the whole story. "Good evening, Mr. Moretti." She got out, her notepad ready. "Can I get you a drink?" "A 97 Brunello, and what do you suggest for dinner?" He was playing with her. This was his show. She could have pointed to the priciest dish, but she knew that wasn't the real test. Her voice, a steady cadence discussing an 8-hour ossobuco, was a thin sheet of normality stretched over a gorge of unspoken war. For the next 2 hours, a quiet battle of wills unfolded. He assumed the guise of the ideal diner, his subdued politeness a subtle instrument of mental torment. The leather book in his hands was a prop. His actual focus never left her. Every gesture she made was meticulously recorded by an acquisitive gaze, not of desire, but of possession. The same predatory calculation he had once aimed at Salvatore Bianchi. It was the appraisal of a collector who had just found his next masterpiece. His study of her was clinical, an effort to disassemble her very being. He relished the ambient fear he radiated, a low hum of dread that permeated the room. When dinner was over, she delivered the check. He shut the book and finally presented his primary question: why she had stepped in. Bella affected ignorance. He clarified, mentioning her defiance at table 12, a move he described as a foolish risk against a man like Bianchi. She recited a defense based on protocol, but her eyes conveyed a different truth: terror now laced with defiance. "I did it for myself, Mr. Moretti. Your commotion jeopardized my livelihood, my pay, and possibly my job itself. This work is essential for my survival." "Important," he repeated, his finger tapping the cover. "For your brother, Marco, the one in St. Jude's." In that instant, Bella's universe stilled. The notepad slipped from her fingers, its fall echoing in the sudden quiet. She didn't bend to pick it up. "How do you know that?" she asked, her voice a whisper of a new, profound horror. "It is my business to know things, Isabella," he said gently. "His unusual autoimmune disorder. The therapies that run $24,000 apiece. Your 2 jobs here and data entry just to meet the expense. And I am also aware your efforts are not enough." He held her most deeply buried secret. This was no longer a mere confrontation. It was a vivisection of her life. He had flayed her open, leaving her very soul exposed to his scrutiny. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice cracking. "I want to understand," he answered, leaning in. "You had the most to lose in this room, yet you were the only one to challenge me. You put your hand on my arm. You told me no. It has been a very long time since I was denied anything without swift reprisal. You are either a woman of incredible bravery or incredible foolishness." "I am just desperate," she admitted, the words escaping her. "And desperation breeds irrationality." "Indeed," he agreed, his gaze darkening with a sympathy more chilling than his anger. "It certainly does." He stood, leaving behind an obscenely large amount of cash. Standing next to her, his presence was a physical violation, his rich cologne of sandalwood and bergamot saturating the air. "This world has no mercy, Isabella," he whispered, a secret shared between them. "It does not care for solitary lionesses. The hyenas always come for you." Then he was gone. Bella stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. He had not issued a threat. He had performed a complete demolition of her soul. He had shown with surgical precision his power to invade every corner of her world, from her job to her brother's sick room. The psychological assault had commenced. His aim was not her destruction, but her systematic deconstruction. He came back 2 nights later, and the night after, always alone, always at one of her tables. He would try different entrees, sip expensive wine, and read, and he would watch. They exchanged no more personal words. He just observed. Her co-workers started to avoid her section as if it were contaminated. Other patrons gave his table a wide berth. Bella felt like a museum piece, put on display for the singular amusement of one man. Her tips from other customers began to dwindle. Being near her was now seen as a liability, as if she carried a contagion. Moretti, of course, made up for it, his tips more than covering her losses. But this was about control, not money. He was methodically isolating her, shrinking her world until he was the only one left in it. The fragile architecture of Bella's life began to crumble 2 weeks after her first encounter with Alessandro Moretti. The sickness she had relayed to everyone, the one she had even begun to believe herself, was exposed as a heart-wrenching fiction. She went to St. Jude's. It was a bright Wednesday morning when she came with coffee, ready for Marco's infusion. Instead, she was stopped in the lobby by Dr. Lena Hansen. a woman whose compassion was equaled by her candor. "Isabella, could we talk in my office?" The doctor's face was somber. A cold dread took hold of Bella. Is he okay? Physically, Marco is fine. He's been discharged. Discharged? That's not possible. He has a session today. No, Isabella, he doesn't, the doctor corrected, leading her into a sterile, compact office. He's been skipping his treatments for weeks. He signs in for the appointments and then he leaves. He hasn't had an infusion in almost a month. Bella felt the ground beneath her dissolve. What? No, I made the payments. Where is he? That is the other problem. Dr. Hansen paused, then pushed a folded paper across her desk, a receipt from a cash checking service. One of our staff found this. Isabella, Marco has no autoimmune disease. We ran a new series of tests last month. He has anemia and is malnourished, but the symptoms he's been faking align with withdrawal. We believe he has a severe gambling problem. The words didn't compute. Gambling? Not Marco. He's sick. He is sick, Dr. Hansen confirmed gently, but the sickness is addiction. He invented the symptoms to get money from you. The story about experimental treatments was a complete fabrication. He has been systematically taking your money and losing it on bets. Bella's eyes were locked on the paper slip. All the color fled from her face, replaced by a deep, glacial void. The thousands of dollars, the endless double shifts, the constant, soul-crushing weight, all of it had been built on an intricate lie. She left the hospital in a daze, walking without purpose. She ended up at their rundown apartment. He was there. The room was a complete wreck. Marco was on the couch, shivering, his eyes wide with fear. Bella, I can explain. You lied to me, she breathed, the numbness in her solidifying into a cold rage. All this time, the hospital, the treatments, none of it was real. I got in too deep, Bells, he cried, his tears streaking his face. It started small, then I lost. I tried to win it back, but just went deeper. I took the money, yes, I just needed to get even. I was going to pay you back every last cent. Pay it back with what, Marco? She screamed, the sound raw and shredded from her soul. I have been killing myself working. I stood up to him for you. I know, but Bella, they're going to hurt me. Who? Who is going to hurt you? The man I owe. He isn't some bank. The debt is $50,000, Bella. He gave me until tonight. If I don't pay, he'll break my legs or worse. $50,000? The number was so immense it felt like a joke. It was a sentence handed down from the shadows. Who is it, Marco? The name he spoke, Bianchi, clicked into place like a final stone, revealing the cruel design of the trap. This was not just a debt. It was a trespass into a rival's territory. Moretti's previous words, "The hyenas come," now replayed not as a caution, but as a prophecy he himself had orchestrated. He had studied Marco's weakness, knew his creditor, and merely waited for the structure to fall. In that moment of icy realization, Bella ordered, "Stay here." Her voice a serene facade over a raging inferno. She didn't run from the crisis. She ran straight into it. Bankrupt and trapped, she went to the only man who could solve this maze, the architect of her own ruin. With no address, she sprinted the 2 miles to Lucia's, the one certain point in his orbit. She arrived at the restaurant door, looking like a ghost of desperation long before her shift. "Where is he?" she asked Mr. Henderson. "Alessandro Moretti." His denial was feeble. When Chloe tried to step in, Bella's control shattered. "He knows," she said, her voice a torrent of tears and rage. He set this whole thing up. I need to find him. She was running to her tormentor, begging for salvation. She burst out onto the sidewalk, a frantic ship with no harbor in sight. On the pavement, the city's pressure bore down, squeezing the air from her lungs. Just then, a long, black Maserati Quattroporte slid to a flawless stop in front of her. The back window lowered, showing Alessandro Moretti, his face a tranquil mask. "Get in, Isabella," he said, the order as soft as a suggestion. She complied without a thought, yanking the door open and collapsing into the plush leather. The car, smelling of sandalwood and power, drove off. "You knew," she accused, her voice a low vibration of fury. "You knew all of it about Marco, his vice, the sums he owed Bianchi, and you watched it all, night after night, awaiting this very implosion." "I did," he admitted, his gaze lost in the streaks of headlights below. "You allowed this to unfold. You could have stepped in." "Stepped in?" He turned then, his eyes a cold flame. "Bianchi is a competitor. Your brother's foolishness was his own cross to bear, not mine, until he involved you. And now I am involved. They will destroy him, and it will be your fault." "He is at fault," Moretti countered, his voice sharp as a blade. "For his choices, his lies." He paused. "But you are not a choice, and you do not lie." The vehicle turned into a private, guarded entrance that opened to an immense mansion at the water's edge. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, her defiance crumbling into a cold, profound dread. He observed her for a long, silent beat. $50,000, that is his debt. I can erase it. He snapped his fingers. "Just like that, I reach out to Bianchi, I take on your brother's liability, and I guarantee he continues to breathe." "And the price?" she asked, already knowing it would cost her everything. The car came to a halt. He shifted his entire frame toward her. "I am a collector, Isabella. I obtain rare things, art, cars, and, on occasion, people. And I consider you to be exceptionally rare. You have a rebellious spirit. You show loyalty to the unworthy, and you do not fear me, not in your core." "I am terrified of you." "No," he argued with a trace of a smile. "You are terrified of what I am, of your own failure to protect him. The fear is not of me. I covet that quality. I covet that fire, that absolute devotion." "What must I do?" "You will come to work for me," he declared, his tone final. "Your new position is my personal aide. You will live on this estate. You will manage my public affairs, my investments. You will always be at my side. You will exist in my world. In exchange, your brother's debt is nullified. He will be admitted to the finest rehabilitation clinic in the country. He will be safe, and you will belong to me." It was not an offer. It was a decree. "A golden cage," Bella breathed, her gaze fixed upon the lavish fortress. "A cage is a cage," he agreed. "But this one offers a view of the world, and you'll be secure. The wolves will be gone. Only the lion will remain." She saw an image of Marco, trembling. She saw Bianchi's thugs. She felt the impossible weight of it all. Alessandro Moretti had simply waited for her life to shatter. And now he was the sole person offering to piece it back together, but in his own distorted image. "Do we have an accord, Isabella Rossi?" he inquired. She stared at this lethal, brilliant man. There were no more moves for her to make. He had been playing a different game entirely. "Yes," she choked, her voice hollows. "We have a deal." The transition from her former life to the new was swift and merciless. Alessandro Moretti moved with a warlord's precision. Within 60 minutes of her consent, 2 actions were set in motion. Vinnie Gallo was sent to clear Marco's account with Salvatore Bianchi, a deal settled with menace, not money. At the same moment, 2 of Moretti's silent-suited figures arrived to collect Marco. She was granted 5 minutes to say her farewell. "Bella, where are they taking me?" Marco asked in a panic, his eyes wide with fear. "You're going to a facility in Vermont," Bella said, her voice flat and numb. "You are going to get better, Marco. This is your one chance." "But what about the money?" "It's been handled," she replied. "How? What have you done?" he demanded, clutching her arm. "Did you go to Moretti? Bella, you can't do this." "I had to," she said, pulling her arm away. "You left me with no other path. Now go. Heal yourself. That is the only repayment I require." She watched as they escorted him from the room. No tears came. Only a deep, empty ache consumed her. She had rescued him by selling herself. With just 1 bag packed, her former apartment already seemed foreign. The black Maserati was waiting outside. It returned her to the Moretti compound. The estate was not a house, it was a declaration of dominance. A modern Gothic citadel of dark glass and stone that loomed over the churning waves of Lake Michigan. The interior was a museum of cold elegance, black marble, immense empty chambers, and priceless art beneath a perpetually overcast sky. It was breathtaking, antiseptic, and without a soul. She was led to a suite in a private section, far grander than her previous life, with a wardrobe already stocked with new clothes. It was a cage made of silk and stone. Her first day passed in a blur. She was introduced to Mrs. Petrova, the formidable housekeeper who governed the property with quiet authority and viewed Bella with undisguised suspicion. She was handed a laptop, a new cell phone, and a small mountain of paperwork. "You will be in charge of my public-facing interests," Alessandro informed her from across his enormous, bare office. The room was characterized by a polished desk and a panoramic window framing the lake. "The board meetings, the charity functions, my travel schedule, you will act as the wall between myself and the legitimate world." "And what about the illegitimate one?" she ventured to ask. A slight flicker in his jaw. "Vinny is responsible for that. You will have no involvement. Your hands will stay clean. That is my rule. I am very particular about keeping my world separate." But they were not separate. They overlapped. The men in his logistics meetings had the same vacant expressions as Vinnie Gallo. The charity events were ostentatious displays of power where prominent figures exchanged tight, brittle smiles. Bella soon grasped that her purpose was not logistics but surveillance. She was to be his shadow. Her mind, accustomed to chaos, adjusted with remarkable speed. She learned to foresee his actions, to decipher minute expressions, to sense when to speak and when to become invisible. And that was when Sofia Carbone appeared, the daughter of a New York family head. She had, as Vinny put it, been circling Alessandro for years. She was a gorgeous woman with dark hair and a wardrobe of deadly sophistication. She walked through the estate as if it belonged to her, and she looked at Bella as if she were an insect. "Alessandro, darling," Sophia purred, gliding into his office while they reviewed files. She paid Bella no mind, leaning over his shoulder, her hand coming to rest on his chest. "You have been ignoring my calls. I was under the impression we had plans." "I have been preoccupied, Sophia," Alessandro answered, his attention remaining on the document, his body growing rigid. He moved her hand away. Sophia's toxic glare fell upon Bella. "Distracted by your new pet," she sneered. She smells of poverty. Bella flinched but held her tongue. Isabella is my assistant and infinitely more skilled than your last three, Alessandro said, his tone like frost as he removed Sophia's hand from his person. We are in the middle of something. The rejection was sharp and clear. Sophia's expression hardened, her smile evaporating. She gave Bella a look that promised consequences. Of course, darling, all business, she cooed, her eyes glacial. She made her exit with a dramatic flair. Bella immediately broke the silence. You ought to be wary of her. Sophia is a child in expensive clothes, Alessandro dismissed. She is a snake with her father's influence, Bella countered, surprising herself. That flash of interest sparked again in his eyes. You see that. Good. She's a matter I will deal with. Now concerning these shipping manifests. He was reassessing her, elevating her from an employee to an advisor. Fear was being replaced by cold analysis. She was learning his way of thinking. However, the real threat was their continuous proximity, working late into the night. She witnessed the powerful man and also the exhausted human being beneath. During long nights in the library, they talked, not about their work, but about literature, the city, about anything except their situation. A strong current formed between them, a magnetic attraction she fought to deny. He was her jailer, the man who had trapped her, but he was also the person who valued her mind and, in his own dark way, provided her with safety. He had never once been improper, never spoken a coarse word. Their contract was built on service, not affection, yet the air was thick with tension. On a stormy night, with the window panes vibrating, he asked the question while staring into his drink. You are no longer afraid of me, are you? I have merely become used to you, Bella retorted, closing her computer. That is not an answer. What about the loathing, Isabella? For the bargain I made you take? She finally met the eyes of the man who had systematically and coldly dismantled her entire life. I loathe the circumstances, she said, with a nod to the luxurious prison he had constructed. I loathe that you exploited my brother's weakness to get to me. He pushed toward the heart of the matter, his stare intense. But do you loathe me? Bella paused. I don't know, Alessandro. My life is a matter of survival. I know you are a monster. I have seen Vinny's records. I have never presented myself as a saint, he acknowledged. But, she added, her voice softening, you rescued Marco. He's in rehab. He's safe. A monster made that happen. How can my hatred be pure? It is not that simple. He turned to see the storm crash over the lake, a reflection of their own internal conflict. Simplicity is a luxury my world does not afford, Isabella. Only varying shades of darkness. You are starting to see them. He told her she should rest. As she was about to leave, his voice stopped her. Isabella, he said, you are the only one in this house who gives me the truth. The only one with that kind of courage. Do not ever lose it. For a heartbeat, she observed this dangerous, isolated man, framed by the raging storm. She left quietly, and as the door clicked shut, an unsettling realization surfaced. Her prison was beginning to feel like the safest harbor in her world. Bella adapts to her gilded confinement with a chilling proficiency. The rhythm of Alessandro's life becomes her own, yet the weekly calls to Marco are a lifeline, the sole element rendering her lavish prison bearable. One conversation, however, plants a seed of poison. Marco recounts the lone shark appearing from thin air, his words echoing. It was like he knew I was about to break. The thought festers. When Alessandro leaves for a 2-day trip, a window of opportunity opens. The silent estate transforms into a proving ground. She must find the truth, and it is locked away in his biometric guarded study, the one room she is forbidden to enter. From the night of the tempest, she had kept the whiskey tumbler, an impulse. What was a token of their warped connection is now her key. With meticulous care, she lifts his latent print and presses it to the scanner. A soft click, and the lock releases. Inside lie his most guarded secrets. She has watched him, knows. The key is nestled in the false bottom of a cigar humidor. She finds the file on his rival Bianchi, and inside it, another marked with her family name, Rossi. Its contents steal the air from her lungs. Surveillance images, her own stolen employment records, and the two documents that form the architecture of the conspiracy. First, a wire transfer to Vinnie Gallo to shadow her brother. The second document, a memo in Vinnie's hand sent to Alessandro long before she pleaded for his help. Boss, it reads, the target is conditioned. Bianchi's operative made the approach. The brother is on the hook. He'll be drowning in debt inside a month. Bianchi will think it's his victory. He gets his leverage, and you get her. The foundation of her world cracks apart. This was no tragic sequence of events. It was a meticulously engineered demolition of her family. As a cold fury builds within her, the sound of the front door echoes through the house. Alessandro, home early. She rises to meet him, the paper eraser in her fist. You lied to me, she unleashes, her voice shredded by betrayal. You get her. Does that ring any bells? Alessandro's face becomes an unreadable mask of calm. He offers no denial. You have been in my study. You forged this cage for me before I even knew I was trapped, she retorts, hot tears of rage scarring her cheeks. You let them destroy my brother just so you could own me. He pivots, attempting to reshape the truth. That was Vinnie's method? I only needed a way in, to shield you. He took a crowbar to the door. And you let him? She chokes out. Before he can form a reply, his secure phone buzzes. He answers, his body going rigid. What? Tell me where. I'm on my way. He ends the call, his expression hardening into stone. Vinnie. Bianchi knows he was played. He thinks you were part of it. He's made his move, settled the account. What are you talking about? He took Marco from the rehab facility. Bianchi had unraveled the plot and taken Marco as collateral, his demand a simple exchange. Bella for her brother's life. Alessandro's resolve is steel. I don't bargain for what is mine. While he and Vinnie marshal for an assault on the Kenosha docks, Bella plants her feet. He is my blood. I'm going. She is told to wait in the car, the silence stretching until a single rifle crack splits the night air. She tumbles from the vehicle and into the maelstrom. A sniper's laser paints a dot on Marco's chest. No! The scream is ripped from her throat. Alessandro moves, a blur of motion becoming a shield for Marco, just as Vinnie silences Bianchi for good. In the frantic flight that follows, Alessandro presses 2 passports and a wire receipt into her hand. Fly to Italy, build another life. It's the only guarantee I have of your safety. He is giving her freedom. On the tarmac, beneath the whine of a private jet, Bella guides Marco up the gangway. She is free, but she hesitates, her gaze drawn back to Alessandro. The choice hangs, suspended in the air. Her brother is safe. A new life awaits. And the architect of her prison, the man who bled to tear it down, watches her go. He stands motionless. He has given her the one thing he swore she would never have again. A choice. The world or him. The story does not end here. Which is the true path forward? To embrace the offered freedom and vanish, or to turn back toward the magnificent darkness she now understands? This is the fulcrum on which a soul is remade. If you are compelled to know what follows this moment, if the paradox of Isabella and Alessandro has taken root in your mind, then join this exploration. Signal your engagement with a like. Share this with those who wrestle with moral ambiguity, and subscribe. We dissect every comment, so tell me, where does her story truly lead? It is a question we are meant to answer together.
From a forensic psychological perspective, the case of Isabella Rossi and Alessandro Moretti provides an unusually clear example of coercive attachment formed under cumulative stress exposure. The narrative is often read romantically because it contains charisma, protection, sacrifice, and emotional ambiguity. Yet when the behavioral patterns are observed systematically, what emerges is less a love story than a highly structured progression from resistance to dependency. Isabella's initial profile is crucial. She is functioning under chronic financial strain, anticipatory grief, caregiver burden, and social isolation. These variables matter because they do not merely produce sadness, they narrow cognition. Under prolonged stress, individuals begin to prioritize immediate stability over abstract autonomy. Their decision-making becomes adaptive in the short term and compromised in the long term. In clinical language, the field of perceived alternatives contracts. This does not reduce intelligence, it reduces maneuverability. Her confrontation with Moretti in the restaurant is often interpreted as evidence that she is immune to fear. That is incorrect. The evidence suggests that she is intensely afraid but operating under a hierarchy of urgency. The threat to her job and therefore to her brother's care supersedes the threat represented by Moretti. This is not fearlessness. It is necessity-driven override. Individuals in extreme caregiving roles frequently demonstrate this pattern. They engage in risky confrontation when the protected attachment figure is mentally present enough to suppress self-preservation. Moretti's response is equally telling. He does not retaliate impulsively. He observes. This indicates high inhibitory control, strategic curiosity, and predatory patience. More importantly, he does not treat Isabella as a simple obstacle. He conducts an assessment. Her willingness to confront him despite obvious danger signals three traits that would interest a man like him: loyalty, pressure tolerance, and independence from conventional intimidation. In predatory power structures, such traits are highly valuable because they are rare and, once redirected, exceptionally useful. The progression that follows is consistent with targeted coercive conditioning. Step 1. Identify the subject's emotional center. In Isabella's case, that center is Marco. Step 2. Map the subject's material vulnerabilities: employment instability, debt, social isolation, exhaustion. Step 3. Ensure that the subject's external options deteriorate or appear insufficient. Whether Moretti directly engineers every collapse or merely exploits existing instability, the psychological effect is the same. The subject begins to experience reality as narrowing around a single surviving axis. Step 4. Present oneself as the only actor capable of restoring control. This is why Moretti is so effective. He does not simply threaten Isabella, he becomes structurally necessary to her survival. Coercive control is most stable when the controlling figure provides both fear and relief. If a captor only terrifies, resistance remains psychologically available. If a captor also rescues, soothes, and stabilizes, resistance becomes emotionally expensive. The subject begins to experience the source of domination as simultaneously dangerous and indispensable. This dynamic often produces what lay observers describe as confused feelings, but from a clinical perspective, it is more precise to describe it as attachment distortion under asymmetric power. Marco's role intensifies the distortion. His deceit is not simply a subplot, it is the mechanism through which Isabella's self-concept destabilizes. She has organized her entire moral life around saving him. When she discovers that the illness narrative is fraudulent and that her labor has been funding addiction, she experiences what trauma theory would call a collapse of meaning. Her suffering loses coherence. She is no longer just overwhelmed, she is disoriented. In such states, people become highly vulnerable to externally supplied structure. They may cling to the first system that can restore order, even if that system is exploitative. Moretti supplies exactly that order. It is important to note that his behavior contains authentic-seeming care. He protects Marco, provides material security, respects Isabella's competence, and at times appears emotionally honest. This is where naive readings become dangerous. Intermittent or selective benevolence does not neutralize coercive architecture. In many abusive or controlling systems, benevolence strengthens the bond because it creates contrast against fear. Relief becomes emotionally magnified. The subject remembers the moments of kindness with disproportionate intensity because those moments regulate distress. This is one reason trauma bonds can be extraordinarily resilient even in highly intelligent individuals. Moretti's psychological profile suggests narcissistic possession rather than impulsive sadism. He does not appear motivated by random cruelty. He appears motivated by acquisition. He collects what he admires. He organizes people as extensions of will. His interest in Isabella is genuine in the sense that he values her uniqueness, but it remains filtered through ownership logic. He does not ask how to love her without harm. He asks how to incorporate her into his world without losing access to what fascinates him. That is a critical distinction. Sincerity is not the same as health. Isabella's developing ambivalence toward him is therefore not evidence of moral weakness. It is the predictable psychological result of cumulative dependency, gratitude induction, fear regulation, and relational deprivation. She is protected by the same man who trapped her. She is seen by the same man who studies and controls her. These contradictions destabilize moral clarity because the nervous system prioritizes what reduces threat in the present. Over time, safety cues associated with the controller can become emotionally powerful even when the controller remains objectively dangerous. The life lesson here is clinically severe but profoundly important. People should not assume they would think clearly in prolonged desperation. Most individuals greatly overestimate their immunity to manipulation because they imagine manipulation is obvious, crude, and external. In reality, the most effective manipulation is elegant. It understands need, it fills gaps, it lowers chaos, it presents dependence as relief, and then gradually normalizes the loss of autonomy as the cost of survival. Isabella's case demonstrates that captivity does not always begin with abduction. Sometimes it begins with being understood too well by the wrong person. Sometimes it begins when help arrives faster than hope. Sometimes it begins when a controlled environment feels kinder than an abandoned world. The tragedy is not that she becomes emotionally conflicted. The tragedy is that under enough stress, emotional conflict may be the most human response available.